Nina Marnie. My name's Cheryl Axelby, and I'm National Co-Chair of Change the Record, and I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the International Juvenile Justice Observatory for recognising the work that we have been trying to advocate for here in Australia with respect to raising the age of criminal responsibility. On behalf of our coalition of members, we are really grateful and that we hope the recognition of winning this award will help also further spread the message that we're trying to achieve here in Australia in raising the age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 14 years of age across every jurisdiction and every state and territory in Australia. It's important to note that the reason why we are very strong advocates in regards to raising the age is that we in Australia have a very horrific story to tell in regards to the ever-increasing incarceration rates of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country, and particularly for our babies, our young people, who have been greatly impacted of the intergenerational incarceration that we've seen happen to our people since colonisation. It's important to also note that when we're talking about the incarceration rates of our babies from 10 years of age, that the reason why we are really, I suppose, passionate is because, our children, our First Nations children, make up at least 60 to 70% of children that are incarcerated in this age group right across Australia. We really believe that raising the age of criminal responsibility to 14, in line with the Human Rights Convention on the Rights of the Child, will create a break in the cycle of the intergenerational incarceration that our people face, and particularly our future leaders and our future generations. By raising the age of criminal responsibility, what we would love to see is a more humane and therapeutic approach to supporting our children who find themselves in the justice system. It's also very important to note that many of our children who in this age group find themselves in the justice system are already in the care of the state or territory and are in what we call government care. So the question really remains, and one that we continually put up to governments, is that by our children who are in care, who are entering the criminal justice system, we need to really question the type of responses that government are currently providing and services to ensure that children who are in government care do not escalate into the justice system. One thing that we really, which is a very startling statistic, is that many of our children who come into care are actually first criminalised when they are actually in government care for acting out in regards to behaviour that we call, trauma, rather than actually the behaviour issues that we see many of our kids who come into care who are separated from families and communities and who are in pain and who don't feel culturally safe in a penal system which only continues to punish our children and are very much institutionalising our children to progress into the adult prison system. So in closing, I just want to say thank you very much. Our coalition of members, we will continue to call for raising the age. We have had commitments in Northern Territory to raise the age to 12 years of age, but when you look at what has happened in the Northern Territory with at least incarceration rates of children, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children being at least making up 90, if not 100% of kids being in lockup. We are disappointed that they did not push to raise the age to 14 years of age. However, progress is good. It's better than none, but we will continue to lobby other states and territories to raise the age to 14, and we will be very happy when we see that day, because it will mean that we will see a reduction in Aboriginal deaths in custody in this country. And thank you very much.
I begin by acknowledging that I am on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We, as First Nations people of this country, are the oldest living culture in the world. Our sovereignty has never been ceded. My name is Antoinette Braybrook. I'm an Aboriginal woman. I was born and have lived all of my life on Wurundjeri country, but my family is Kuki Yalanji. As co-chair of Change the Record with Aboriginal woman Cheryl Axelby, I'm honoured to accept this award on behalf of our First Nations members and other members of our coalition. I take this opportunity to thank the International Juvenile Justice Observatory and its board for its recognition of Change the Record's work. Our work in tackling the systemic issues impacting First Nations kids, the criminalisation and incarceration of our kids. Do you know that in our country there are close to 600 children aged 10 to 13 years locked away in prisons today and in each preceding year? And many more children are hauled through the criminal justice system. 65% of the kids locked away or at risk of being locked up are First Nations kids who are separated from their families and communities. Prisons are violent and harmful. Our kids do not belong there. Imprisoning our kids leads to lifelong harm and trauma. Their chances of employment will be diminished. They will be at risk of being homeless, exposed to alcohol and drugs, and for many, their lives will be lost. As this country's only national First Nations-led coalition, Change the Record campaigns to stop our people's incarceration and end family violence. Our calls are clear. Our governments must invest in our self-determined and evidence-based solutions. As First Nations people, we know the answers. We know what must change. We must lead the work. We must self-determine. Governments must move away from investing in harmful structures and systems that continue to marginalise and oppress our people, those that deprive our kids of their right to thrive in culture and identity. Governments must start hearing our calls to invest in addressing the underlying issues that lead to this devastation for our people and communities. To change the record for our people, to end the incarceration of our children, to address the high rates of violence against our women, there must be a massive shift in the way governments listen and act. When it comes to the age of criminal legal responsibility, our country has failed. We have one of the lowest ages of legal responsibility in the world. And we are completely out of step with international standards. The United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child has called on Australian governments to set a minimum age of criminal responsibility to no lower than 14 years old. Change the Record has campaigned hard over the past 2 years, demanding governments to act on the United Nations calls to raise the age. Change the Record has public support with our campaign being backed by a national alliance of Aboriginal-led organisations, medical experts and human rights and legal organisations. 126,436 people have signed our petition to raise the age, and over 120 organisations have backed our call. We have made sure our federal and state politicians know the depth and breadth of our community support for this critical change. There is hope with the recently elected new Australian government acknowledging that the current age is too low. We must keep the pressure on, and we will keep the pressure on. But our country still has a long, long way to go. Once again, thank you for the recognition of Change the Record's critical work.